Hello, it's Dawn Michelle and welcome back to my channel. So I get a lot of questions about what an average week looks like for me in my practice. So all last week I recorded all my interactions with my decks. So let's go ahead and pop into my practice last week. So I actually begin each week on Monday with a look back at the week previous because that is when I do my Gamify My Life reading. So Gamify My Life is a process that I've talked about quite a bit on my channel. It's a practice that I'm doing all throughout 2025 to kind of be a little bit more mindful about where I'm spending my time and just to try to make those mundane tasks a little bit more fun. I'll include some links below to the videos where I explain the process and the decks that I'm using and things of that nature. So even though I'm looking at the week previous and I am collecting all of my points for each of my 5 categories. For me, those are vitality, which is my health and wellness, insight, which is personal growth, charisma, which is interpersonal relationships, wisdom is my spiritual practice, and dexterity is anything to do with work. So while I'm adding up all these points and looking at where I'm spending my time and energy, and I'm putting them into my little Hobonichi weeks, which is where I am not necessarily planning my Gamify life because all my planning actually happens in my Hobonichi cousins, but I'm using this to keep a record, to reflect and to record my tarot readings around my Gamify. So since we're just looking at my practice throughout a week, we're not going to focus too much on my planners. I will have a separate video coming out on that later this month, so keep an eye out if you're interested. I like having my cards to be a reflection of each of these categories. My readings in general are more reflective than predictive most of the time, but here I'm also kind of looking at where did I fall short last week? Where do I feel like I did really well? Where do I need to maybe put some more effort in the coming week? It does also help me kind of think about where I want to maybe refine week by week because I'm always trying to be the best version of myself. So this has been a really great process for this because I'm looking at not only like where do I spend the majority of my time, how am I also interacting in those categories of my life, and where do I need to shift and adjust in order to make this week an even better one than last week. So I also begin every day with a card pull. This month I'm using the Apothecary Spirits Oracle. This is a beautiful herbal oracle deck. I'm definitely getting into the guidebook and reading messages every time I pull a card, but I'm also spending time reflecting on the art and doodling them in my planner as well. So my planner does kind of function as both a planner and a tarot journal. So we'll see it in both videos because tarot really doesn't just occupy its own little separate space in my life. It's integrated into a lot of different things that I do, so it shows up in a lot of different places for me. So on Monday, I pulled my daily card. I got the golden halo. I doodled the illustration or, my silly little version of it in my planner. And then I write to the card title and I read through the guidebook and just look for something that's really going to stand out to me that I want to carry with me throughout the day. For Monday, I wrote, "Step into a world of the sublime and challenge what you think you know." It's a beautiful little message from the guidebook. I really love carrying that with me throughout the day. So on Tuesday, I began my day with my daily card pull as per usual. I got Wisteria, doodled the lovely little illustration. I've been adding some color, just a little pop of color into my illustrations this month. It's been really fun. The color is kind of a key part of this deck for me. So I've really been allowing that to come forward in my journaling as well. And the thing that really stood out for me about that was live your truth and be present. So Tuesday's a great balance day for me. I spend a huge part of the day working, creating content, really putting in a lot of energy and effort into what it is that I'm doing here in this space. And usually Tuesday or Wednesday is the day that I work on my fellowship practice. And because it is a new month, so I spent a nice chunk of the afternoon setting up in my Enchanted Library journal. Our practice is the Glass Slipper, and it is loosely based on the story of Cinderella. So I did a little bit of collaging. I had a really difficult time deciding what I wanted the initial cover page to look like for the month. I made a lot of changes. I did some things, didn't like it, pulled it back up, tried again. Sometimes it's just a process to figure out what it is that I want on the page to visually reflect how I'm seeing the practice and what I'm going to be focusing on. I ended up kind of going with this like torn paper look. I knew I definitely wanted the silver kind of starry night that I have in the PDF. A lot of the stickers that I use actually come from the PDF, and I create that as a sticker sheet for my members. So I've got the little book with the slipper and the mice, and then I just added some florals, and you'll see that most of what I did was incorporating those stickers as well as my floral stickers from my botanical book. So each month begins with a little bit of a narrative talking about where we were in the previous month and then moving into what we're doing in the current month. We're also rolling our D20 to get an archetypal energy, so I went through that practice. I got the Empress for March, which was kind of amazing. I feel like that's a really good fit for the month for me and the things that I have planned in my life and in my practice. Then we also begin the month with the caretaker, who is our personal guide throughout this journey. And my caretaker is Edgar, who is represented by this little black obsidian skull here. I showed him in my monthly wrap up, talked about him a little bit, and we pull cards for a message from our caretaker to carry into the next month with us. So later Tuesday evening, I almost always play Baldur's Gate 3 with Lisa Pepez. Every Tuesday we do a role play game. So not only are we playing the game and streaming it on Twitch, and I'll leave a link below if you want to come check it out, but we also actually get into character on Tuesdays and we role play. Funny enough, we also role play in our Sunday game with Allie and Krista, and I'll talk about that when we get to Sunday. But we do often incorporate decks and tarot into a lot of our games as well. And so for our role play game that we are just getting ready to wrap up, before we start a new game here in the next couple weeks, we do like to pull a card from our deck that we've related to our characters. I'm playing Maleficent, and my deck that I've chosen for her is the Nui Tarot. I can't ever remember the actual proper name of this deck. I absolutely love this deck. I did a whole video on it. I think it's completely underrated, but it's a great one for Maleficent, or for Mal as we call her, because she's a particular type of origin character that you can play in the game, and she lost all of her memories and is trying to discover who she is. Now we're pretty much at the end of our roleplay adventure with Mal and Regina. So Mal definitely knows who she is. She knows what she's about, but I love this deck for her. And it worked great throughout our role play, because this deck really is, nothing is what it seems on the surface. And that is really how I feel like Mal, because she couldn't remember her past, she really only had surface level things at the beginning of the game and the beginning of the role play, and we had to kind of find her story, find her way through the whole adventure, and it's been a lot of fun. But another deck, another moment, I connected with tarot, this time using it in relation to the game that I was playing. So Wednesday began with another daily card pull. And for this one, I pulled, and I do not know how to pronounce this, so I might slaughter it, but I pulled the Shashandra berry, did, of course, my little doodle for the day, gave it a little bit of color. And what I pulled out of the guidebook to write down for that day is, you too are whole and complete on your own. I've really felt like I was getting messages this week that were really reaffirming kind of the whole like name change and moving forward into a more expanded version of what I create here on my channel. I really felt like a lot of the messages that I was getting were really reaffirming that for me. So I went about my day on Wednesday. I did, some editing. I did some more recording. Lisa and I had a whole chat session planning our next role play. And then I did my actual card pull for the Enchanted Library. So I did my week 1 pull. Now the decks that I chose, I'll talk about more in my wrap up and how they worked for me at the end of the month. But I had just gotten in this Heavenly Souls tarot deck, and I just really couldn't stop thinking about it. I had done a little flip through with my members and my coffee and cards, and I just really wanted to figure out a good way to bring it into practice. And I thought, you know what, maybe it might fit really well for this sort of Cinderella energy that we have going on. So I pulled it in. I grabbed the Pear Tree Court because I always like to have at least one Oracle deck for that support card that we're pulling for the week. But then also I was torn because I really wanted the animals. Now, generally for the practice, I pick 2 Oracles and 1 Tarot, but I just felt like the Hearthwood Tarot was just such a great fit for this Cinderella energy, because a lot of what we're going to be looking at throughout the month is not only taking ownership of our own life, but also where we find support. And I feel like the little animals and all the there's tons of little mice in the Hearthwood Tarot. I absolutely love it. I feel like it was a really, really good fit for this. I'll talk about it more, how it actually went and how I felt about using it at the end of the month. But I went ahead and did my practice. Now, I usually sit down and do the whole practice for the week at one time. We have a card pull to kind of create a foundational energy. We have some journaling that we can do around that, or just some things to think about as we're working through this practice. So I got fluidity, and I did end up writing down a little note from the little pamphlet in Danny's deck that says, "Don't hold fast to rigid norms that do not serve you." That's such a great message for me. Then I went ahead and pulled the 3 cards for the actual spread portion of the work, and I got the 3 of Wands, the Devil, and the 6 of Cups, and that was all just completely fitting for me. And then at the end, there's also an enchantment, and this is more of the interactive portion of the practice, which is also completely optional. Not everybody chooses to do it, or some people choose to create their own version of it, which I think is absolutely wonderful. And so for this particular enchantment, we were to pull 3 additional cards, and then we were to roll our d6 to see how we were to engage with that energy. So I did that process, did the enchantment, put all my cards together, took my picture, and then of course wrote my reflections, did a little sticker collaging just to kind of make my pages look cute and pretty. One of the things I really love about these narrative practices is that it allows me to not only follow the narrative, to have a little bit of element of gameplay, but underneath it all is always that kind of personal growth, self-reflective energy. And it gives me different things to work on that I might not necessarily think about in just any given day. So Thursday I did my daily card pull again in the morning, and the message that I got was, remember to still be yourself and never lose your authenticity in the process, which was an amazing little message. I did some recording on Thursday, and I did end up working with another deck technically in the afternoon, but it was a deck that I did a mod on, and that's coming up in a video later this week, so I'm not going to include any spoilers here, but technically I did work with another tarot deck, this time in a creative process doing a deck mod on it. So Friday I pulled my card again, and I got my favorite little card in this deck, which I was really, really excited about. I loved wrapping up the week with this particular card. I pulled the chamomile card, and I had so much fun doodling these flowers. I absolutely love it. I think the card is beautiful. It's one of my favorites in the deck, and the little message that I picked out from the guidebook was, your own self-care is vital. I've been struggling, as y'all probably know, with some health issues and some back problems and things like that, and I was having a bit of a challenging week, and I was having a really hard time taking the time that I needed, taking the breaks that I needed, because I was so motivated to get things done. I usually end up doing some sort of a reading, some sort of a spread or something throughout the week, just kind of a random, it's technically, I guess, a one shot by my own personal definition. It's not something that really exists within the context of my normal practice. So this week I had been collecting all of the cards that I pulled for my daily cards. What I decided to do is pull out my Tarot de Carlotides, which is one of my favorite little decks. And rather than shuffling and like pulling cards at random, what I did was actually go through the deck just like quickly. And the first card that looked like it visually and the colors matched the oracle card on the table, I matched them up. So rather than just doing a random shuffle and pull, I let the colors determine what card sat where. And that was a really interesting exercise, because the color was kind of one of the key things that I was tying into or pulling into practice with the Apothecary Spirits Oracle, because there's like one primary color on each card, and I absolutely love that. It really gives me a sense of the energy of the card, and so I really wanted to exaggerate that and then get a message from that. What I kind of got out of this reading on the whole was, it was really time to take a much needed break from the busyness. And so I did. I took the rest of that Friday off, and I read my book, and I just hung out with my husband, and we made dinner, and it was lovely. But sometimes I just really need that message to like reaffirm what I already know I need to do. And a lot of times I use tarot for that. It's just a reaffirmation of things I already know. But sometimes getting it from the cards, it just has a little bit of a bigger impact, and I'm more apt to listen if my cards reaffirm the message for me, which from my personal perspective, it's all coming from within me anyway. So like, it's just a reaffirmation of my own inner voice. echoing through the cards. And sometimes that's just the push that I need. So the weekends tend to be a little bit more busy. I have a lot of stuff going on. I tend to spend Saturdays with my husband or, my family. So I don't pull any daily cards on the weekends, but I seem to be doing my wisdom readings most every Saturday and my wild magic / self-care readings every Sunday. It's just kind of a rhythm I've fallen into this year, and it's working really well for me. So on Saturday, I decided to do a fairly simple, although I dice casted over top of it, which definitely makes for a bigger reading for me. But I did a Hades and Persephone reading. Now, I work with Hades and Persephone energy in a very specific way. I think I've talked about it some in my membership videos because it's quite a personal little practice. But I decided to just pull one oracle from the deck that I use in alignment with Persephone energy and one from the deck that I use in Hades energy. I talked about both of those decks in my monthly wrap-up last month. I've talked about them many times because these are the decks that I use specifically when I work with Hades and Persephone, and it's pretty much the only time I use them. And then I just pulled one tarot card for a message from each, and then I did the dice casting over the top of it. So for this particular practice, actually the dice casting had a much bigger impact on me than the actual card pulls did. The card pulls were just kind of reaffirming what the dice were telling me. I used my Hades dice and my Persephone dice, and I casted both of them because those are two very different energies for me and they work in alignment with each other. And it was really interesting because in several positions, several dice positions, I got the same message. So my D20, which is my archetypal energy underneath things, for both Hades and Persephone, I got a 12, which is the Hanged One. Really interesting that those both came up. And then in my D8 position, which is kind of like where I'm at, like what phase I'm at within this process, I got a 4, which was momentum in both sets of dice. It was interesting when I was looking at that idea of momentum versus the Hanged Man. I wrote in my planner when I recorded this all in like suspension and momentum because those two keywords really stood out to me. And what I was getting out of this reading and my work with Hades and Persephone was that there is this conflict between a need to pause, but this constant desire to continue to move forward. And that's something that I realize that I struggle with quite a bit just in general, is that I'm always trying to move forward, but sometimes I just need the pause. And that was really coming through this reading for me and my work with these two deities. So then we come to Sunday, the last day, what I consider the last day of the week. And every Sunday I seem to be doing my wild magic / self-care readings. So I pull out from my Gamify in the back, I have a list of 100 prompts. These prompts are available in a little PDF on that original video. If you want to check it out, totally feel free to use it. I roll my 2d10s to get my 100, and then that's the prompt that I use for my reading. So for Sunday, my number was 67, and so my prompt was, where might I be seeking scarcity? I'm still using my World of Warcraft tarot and my moon deck for these readings. I do not know how long that will continue, but I'm rolling with it for as long as it actually still works for me. And when I pulled my cards, I ended up with the 8 of Swords and the 10 of Swords. And then I pulled a moon deck card in the middle to kind of give me that, like, where do I go from here? And it was great because my center card was play is my pathway to joy. And what these cards in this reading really reaffirmed to me was that I have been focusing way too much on like the things that I'm supposed to be doing. I've been really minimizing my playtime. And I'm like seeking scarcity in playtime right now, like in an unhealthy way, because I'm trying to do more work and I'm trying to do the things that I'm supposed to do. And sometimes I forget that that playtime is so important for me, for my creative energy level. I need the playtime to recharge my batteries, especially my creative batteries. If I don't take time out to play, whether that's literally playing a game or just, reading a book for the pure joy of reading it, or doing, some art or things of that nature, regardless of what it is, if I don't take time to do that, I am on the fast track to burnout. And that is what that 8 of Swords, 10 of Swords was really telling me, was that, hey, you're headed down this track again. Don't do that again, right? You've been here before. You know what it looks like. Don't fall into the same pattern again. I really need the balance of work and play in my life in order for me to be able to create from a healthy space. So that was just a wonderful kind of reminder of that for me. I swear those prompts always hit just exactly as I need them to hit. So Sunday, I did my reading, had a sort of brunch with Kevin, and then, of course, I jumped into my game, absolutely engaging in playtime with my friends. So Lisa, Allie, Krista, and I, we all get together every other Sunday and we play and we stream Baldur's Gate 3 together over on my Twitch channel. It is so much fun. We do actually role play in that game as well. You know, I was talking about earlier in the week, Lisa and I role play our Tuesday games, but we just kind of fell into naturally role playing in our Sunday game, which we call Tabs and Tarot, because originally, when we started, we were pulling tarot cards for combat, and the deck that I was using for this is Tarot of a Hidden Realm. This deck represents my character, Elowen, who is, funny enough, she's their mom. So that just ended up happening through role play. My character apparently has a bunch of different kids, and it's just really funny how the whole role play ended up working out. But this is a great deck for me for working with Elowen. Now, because we have all of the companions running around with us as well. We have quite a large party. There are 8 of us, so we're not pulling cards for combat anymore because it takes way too long, but we are still using cards and using our dice throughout the gameplay to just incorporate for different elements and things like that. And it's really fun. And I really enjoy this one for Elowen because Elowen is not only a druid, but she's also quite older. And so I feel like a lot of these cards really represent her energy well. She's older, sometimes wiser, sometimes not. She's not really the greatest mom in the world, but it's pretty funny. So that was kind of how I wrapped up my week with tarot, was really using tarot in play, which was fantastic because that was the message that really came through in my Sunday reading, was definitely take the time that I need to play because it's an important part of revitalizing my creative energy, and I definitely need to do that in order to be able to do all the other things that I want to do and have to do in any given day. So that's just kind of how a general week, a little bit more because I had fellowship set up, so how I start a new month as well as how I just kind of go about my tarot practice or working with decks and tarot throughout the week. As I mentioned, I'll be doing a separate video talking about my planners specifically. They are a little bit of a hybrid, which means they showed up in both places, but I'll go into a little bit more detail and do a better flip through in that video. So thank you for hanging out with me today. I hope you enjoyed taking this little peek into my practice last week. As always, you'll find links for most of what I've shared here in the description box below.